A blessed morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Greetings to the SG, my fellow colleagues, those listening. Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Hickerson, and your support staff, Ms. Pantaflat. The more I heard the presentation, the deeper I sank in my chair because I got the feeling that it's doom and gloom, that we are about to die soon. Very depressing. But I have a couple comments and a couple questions that could maybe get me out of this dreadful mood. So, Ms. Hickerson, I'm glad you mentioned the BAFPOL because I had it written down. What I'd like to see or get suggestions from the Nature Foundation is how could the Nature Foundation be self-sustaining? Okay, so for example, if the foundation would be able to hire a BAFPOLer and Ms. Pantaflet would be able to amend our legislation that this BAFPOLer could give fines, and part of those fines are collected and goes towards Nature Foundation, which would then in return pay, employment of the staff at Nature Foundation, then it would not be so much that the Nature Foundation itself continues to rely on others. I also saw in your presentation that the funding by the European Union, the expertise from France, the World Fund are also in your presentations. Do you receive any funding from them? Because the way it sounded is that you're functioning on that 303,000 alone from from St. Martin's government. Then I'm happy also to hear that the SLA is to be renewed now in January. It was planned to be renewed, and that you've already had conversations with the Minister of Rami. Then concerning Indigo Bay, am I to understand that there was no advice from Nature Foundation when it came to that project? I'd like some clarification on that. Then on page 20 from your presentation, I see what I would call low-hanging fruits. It seems like just suggestions to marine species protection has to do with just changes or amendments to the current legislation. And like my fellow colleague, MP Westcott, asked, I would like a number to that. If you have a suggestion on what would it cost to make the amendments, so that we could deal with our parrotfish, the sea urchins, the queen conch, which is extremely important to me, and the spiny lobster, the mangroves, and the season closures. So if that, then we could maybe sit as Parliament and see if we could find those funds during our next budget amendment. Then, let's see, that. And if we could get from the Nature Foundation one list, a priority list, and starting from the most important, something that you say this needs to be done now within the next 6 months, the next year, and then we could start looking at it in that, because you're the expert. But right now it seems like there's so much to be done, and I know you have a better overview of how and when. Thank you.
Thank you, MP LaCruz. Miss, I see that the MP still has one question. MP?
I forgot to mention one thing, and that is concerning you said the carbon in the air, maybe an idea also legislation to increase the controls on old cars, and I know that Ms. Pantaflet is also aware of legislation or a whole plan in TIAT to increase the inspection from the few little points they have to a 21 point, which I also mentioned during the budget. So if something like that could be added to the list, we'll find more solutions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP LaCruz. Would that be it for all your questions, MP? MP? Ms. Hickerson, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, MP LaCruz, for the questions. Regarding ways for the Nature Foundation to be self-sustaining, I do think having somebody integrated that is a BAVPOLer that could address and help with enforcement would help also the capacity issues of the police and Coast Guard and Customs when it comes to addressing nature legislation. They have a lot of priorities, and sometimes nature is kind of low on the list, especially during times when there are other significant enforcement issues happening. Being able to issue a fine that is actually then collected by the Nature Foundation, I'm not sure how difficult that would be to regulate, but it would be something the Nature Foundation would be interested in. And the other way that most of the parks operate as self-sustaining has to do with park entrance fees. So if there is an opportunity for a nature area to be designated that is managed by the Nature Foundation, that we could open up to tourists as a park that has entrance fees, is another way to alleviate the financial stress on the government for nature support. Regarding the project funds overview, the funders that were listed in the presentation, including Expertise France, the World Bank, IUCN, that project was funded by that group. And the total project cost, which was about 18 months of project work, was over $700,000. So that funding was split between the Nature Foundation and the Ministry of Romy. And the Ministry of Romy, the large amount of that funding went to the resilience planning consultants who are producing the report that would be reviewed and then published by the Ministry of Romy. So for the Nature Foundation, that funding meant that for 18 months, we could hire 3 staff, 2 paid interns, and we purchased a lot of materials to be able to execute the project. And due to the high amount of the funding, we were also able to hire people of the highest education level the Nature Foundation has ever housed. That project was able to support the first PhD holder as a science officer that the Nature Foundation has had. So project funding like that goes a long way in increasing our capacity, but when it runs out, I either find the next project or I lose all of that staff. So for one of the staff, we have been able to find the next project funding, which is from IUCN under Best Life, and that will employ only 1 staff because the project funding was significantly lower than this one. So that's the issue with the project funding. Project Carina was the primary staff capacity that we had outside of the SLA. And now in 2025, we're operating with the SLA. We have a fund from Blue Marine that supports a marine park ranger. And then we have the Best Life Fund. So that would be all of the staff that we have, or staff support funds that we have. Otherwise, we have things like $15,000 towards executing seagrass monitoring. Nothing that can support a staff member for long term. Regarding Indigo Bay, the Nature Foundation did give advice, I think maybe more than 2 years ago, originally, and it was only a terrestrial-based advice. That advice was given under the previous manager of the foundation. So I'm not sure what the conditions were under the request or what we were given as a request to give advice, but that advice was submitted and has been included as we review and try to get more information about what is happening in Indigo Bay. And our primary focus now and our concerns lie with the marine and coastal area, not the terrestrial side, primarily because the work there has been executed already. And I agree that for our species protections, those are low-hanging fruits. I'm not sure, do you have thoughts on the cost of something like that?
I think it's very premature, so I would be very cautious to give any indication right now as to cost. We would have to really do an overhaul. We would have to, we would really have to check and see what all of the laws currently say, what they allow, what they don't allow. Do that evaluation first before we determine what exactly is needed and how much time it's going to take and how much it's going to cost. So we can get back to you at a later time.
And then for the priority list and timeline, I would say the same. We have been able now, thanks to the great support of having such a competent and capable staff, for the first time look at a management brief and long-term goals for the foundation. But one of the things that we are missing is a conservation strategy for our organization. So looking into having a priority list specifically regarding policy, legislation, and action from decision makers is something that we could look into and have prepared for the committee, if that's helpful.
Thank you, Ms. Hickerson. I see that MP Irion is next on the list. MP Irion, no? MP Irion, you have the floor.